Welcome to Simply Robotics, the podcast, a podcast exploring the animation industry one episode at a time. I'm your host, Monique. You can find me on all social media platforms at Simply Robotics, SIMPLYROBOTIX. And when listening to the show, use the hashtag SimplyRoboticsPod to join in on the conversation. Now, if you can't tell by my background, then maybe you don't know what my background is. Today, we're talking about the Sony Pictures animation film, The Mitchells versus the Machines, which premiered on Netflix actually in April of this year, like literally the next to last day of April. So like I said, it's Sony Pictures Animation. It was directed by Michael Rianda and Jeff Rowe. It's an hour and 54 minutes, so we should just call it 2 hours. So according to Netflix, or as Netflix says, the plot or synopsis is a robot apocalypse puts the brakes on a family's cross-country road trip. Now it's up to the Mitchells, the world's weirdest family, to save the human race. IMDb says a quirky, dysfunctional family's road trip is upended when they find themselves in the middle of a robot apocalypse, and suddenly they become humanity's unlikeliest last hope. So both of those things are fine. They're cute descriptions. I'm going to take you a little bit through the movie. So there is a family. It's like a cookie cutter family in terms of its two-parent household, couple of kids, and a dog. The oldest kid is a girl, or femme presenting, let's say that, and she's obsessed with film. So she applies to film school and she gets in and she's gonna go away to college. And there's a lot of family dynamic in her leaving the nest to go to college that is really nice to see on the screen. And, you know, with parents having to, I guess, send their child out into the world, wanting them to succeed, being afraid for them to be so far, the sibling dynamic of like, you know, you don't want to leave your younger sibling home alone, not home alone, but, you know, just like leave them essentially, with the parents, and the younger sister being like, well, you're all I've known. I've never known this home without you. Like, how am I going to navigate all these things? And I love robots, right? Simply Robotics and mechs and all that sort of thing. So what's interesting about the robots in this film is that they're like, basically, if you took your smartphones and just like took the programming and put them in a droid. And of course, when they have AI, what's going to happen? They're going to reprogram your programming and decide, we're going to take over your world because you guys are dumb and you don't appreciate us and technology and all sorts of stuff like that. So the Mitchells, well, the Mitchells' father, what's his name? Rick, he decides that instead of sending his daughter just off, dropping her off at the airport, they're going to do a road trip. That way they can have family bonding. And really, if it wasn't for him doing that, they would have been captured by the robot apocalypse or whatever. So they end up doing this cross-country road trip. And, you know, thankfully, they were the ones that, you know, I'm saying thankfully, they're like the, as the description said, the worst family to have to save the human race. But thankfully, there was at least one family that wasn't captured and was able to do what needed to be done. And by the end of it, you know, it's a really touching story. It's a heartwarming story. I found myself relating to, you know, like having this, and I'm going to get into this in the next, not the next podcast episode, but maybe like the next one. But, you know, just like new beginnings, starting over, leaving home, you know, just, and also the excitement or like feeling like you don't want to leave your family behind, even though they didn't harp on that, but like I took a little piece of that away. So anyways, I'm talking about some characters. Let's actually talk about them more specifically, right? Katie Mitchell, she is the main star really of the film, and I'm getting these character descriptions from the Sony Pictures Animation fandom, which is basically like a wiki page. There's like a fandom is like a division of wiki, I feel like, and I really use that website a lot when it comes to these character descriptions for the animated films because it's almost like a digital encyclopedia. So anywho, as always, which I didn't say, I have the links to like the trailer, this fandom, and some other YouTube videos that I haven't watched yet because like I just wasn't in the mood. But if you want to watch, or if you've watched the show and you're interested in learning more about the film, maybe some Easter eggs or things that could have been oversight that you didn't catch, I'll drop the links to those videos in the description as well. So moving on. Katie Mitchell, she's an 18-year-old girl who has a passion for technology and films, and she dreams of going to college where she will participate in filmmaking, and she does that. What's also interesting is is this a spoiler? Is this a spoiler? Yeah, I think this is a spoiler. So just jump ahead like, I don't know, 40 seconds. Katie gets a girlfriend by the end of the film. So that was cool and like kind of just like random and unexpected, but it was like in the end credit scene, actually it's confirmed. And that was interesting. It's also an interracial relationship, so that is what it is. In one video that I watched, they said that she was wearing like, I guess, a pride flag or a pride pin or something. Not too sure about that. Next, we have Aaron Mitchell, which is Katie's younger brother. He is awkward and he's obsessed with dinosaurs. And they say that he has an overly technical understanding of them. And in reading the character description, they even allude that he can be on the autism spectrum. I can totally see that. I found his voice acting to be a little distracting at times because he has like a deeper voice. I think he's supposed to be somewhere like 9, 10-ish. And his voice is so deep, which sometimes they do that often actually with cartoon characters, right? They will give the boy characters like deeper voices, but sometimes it's just a little, it just makes a disconnect for me. Next, we have Linda Mitchell. She was voiced by Maya Rudolph, who I believe, yes, also voiced the character in The Wallabies. And at times I found myself thinking about The Wallabies too, but even though I'm going to jump ahead for a little bit, I actually enjoyed The Wallabies more than this, but this film, which I'll also get into, pushed the style more than The Wallabies. So Linda Mitchell is the mother. Like many mothers, she's loving, kind, insightful, level-headed, overbearing, strong woman, all that sort of stuff. She also has moments where she overreacts and becomes like I don't know, like a lioness with her cubs, or whatever bears, how, super protective they are of their cubs. Even maybe like ducks and geese, geese can get kind of scary, okay? They can get kind of scary. So anyways, next we move on to Rick Mitchell. They didn't say too much about him, just that he doesn't like technology, which is pretty obvious in the very beginning, and that he prefers nature and his family to technology. Next person I wanted to just note is Mark Bowman. So he's the founder and CEO of PAL Labs, and PAL is kind of like their version of Apple. So he's the one that created, he's like the Black Steve Jobs in this movie. So he's the one that created like the smartphone technology and PAL, which is supposed to be like your pal and your digital pal. And then he did away with that and said, here's your Android pal. And then everything went to poops. So next, moving into the visual style, I really like how Sony Pictures Animation continues to like evolve and explore their animation styles for their films. You saw it really with Into the Spider-Verse, right? Because they came from doing like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, but with the Mitchells versus the Machines, I think in this film was also originally called Connected, and I should say that I like this title better than that because Connected had me thinking it was going to be a bit more like the Emoji Movie or like Ralph Breaks the Internet. So just calling it Mitchells and the Machines, I think really reframed your mind going into the film, right? So like Into the Spider-Verse, this film has a lot of comic book, assets and stuff like that to it. So when there's like exclamations and stuff like that, like action things happening, or like things that they really want to emphasize, they bring in these 2D like illustration elements to the film. So sometimes even when a character's like having a moment or what have you, the whole background would change to be something illustrated, almost like if it's out of a high school student's notebook or if it's out of someone's sketchbook or something like that. And I really appreciated that. It was just like almost like just throwing a whole bunch of just bright, colorful arts and craft project just like in your face. And that's all I really had to say about it. Some of the parts where it seems like they took what they were doing with Into the Spider-Verse, I guess if you think back to when Peter B. Parker is in the restaurant and he's eating like the cheeseburger and fries, and he has like this soft texture, but the black outline in the Mitchells versus the Machines takes that and just further stylizes it to be more cartoony. Like Into the Spider-Verse still tried to keep a more realistic approach, with what they were doing visually, where in this movie they'd really push the cartoony elements, and that is a great segue into the animation for this film. The animation style is extremely loose and fluid, so it just reminds me so much of the early Looney Tunes, Popeye, and those Disney like Silly Symphonies, all those black and white cartoons, and really early like 1920s, 30s, 40s cartoons where they were all like, and I know my podcast listeners, y'all can't see what I'm doing, but just like wiggly arms types of thing. That's what the style reminds me of. There really isn't too much to say other than that. It's very fun, which just leads me to my final thoughts. Like, I don't think this was a bad movie. I don't think so. But I posted on Twitter and IG that I was struggling so hard to get this episode out because I just couldn't stay engaged with the movie. It took me 4 attempts over 3 weeks. I fell asleep 2 times. And then finally, one morning, I just watched the last, 45 minutes, and I finished the movie, but I could not watch it in one sitting. And I feel like that's relatively alarming. I need content for the podcast, but also this was a movie I saw so many people saying so much positive things about. I was like, why can't I enjoy the movie? What's happening? It just was really weird to me. So I don't know. The movie is very zany, wacky, energetic. The characters are charming, but I could not remain focused and engaged throughout the almost 2 hours that this movie is. So I think I just need some time because I actually just finished watching it yesterday before I can really come to unpack why I couldn't really be too focused and engaged. And I actually would like to talk to some people who weren't completely in love with this movie or also struggled to finish it, and what was their reasonings, what things were they hiccuping with and hitting the wall with. What was also interesting to me is they had the T.I. song, Live Your Life, and only the Rianda parts playing multiple times throughout the film because that's the song that Katie and her father bonded over when she was a child. And also just the fact that she was a baby or allegedly born. There's some conflicting continuity things there. In 2003, I was 2003? Wow. Wow. And I was doing the math and all sorts of stuff like that. So anyway, so there's that song, and it goes back to me with animated films having to have a pop hip-hop musical reference all the time in these mainstream movies, and most times it bothers me. And that song personally I wasn't particularly crazy about, even though I love Rihanna and I enjoy hearing that song in the party settings. It keep coming up in the movie and I was like, let the song go, let it go. So overall, I don't know how many stars or whatever I would rate this movie as or say. I think if you like the movie, please, when you see this tweet go out in the YouTube comments, Patreon, Instagram, let me know what you think about it, because I would like to have the dialogue. If you liked it, yeah, and if you didn't like it. But I don't know. I think if you like the Willoughbys, I'm curious if you would like this. And I don't know. I don't have anything else to say. When is this? Okay, so this episode comes out after the fact. So I have an interview coming up with Deborah Anderson of Black Woman Animator at the end of this month. And I also will do a more personal episode, I believe, in July. And with all that being said, if you're not engaging with me on Patreon, you should do so, because that's where I'm documenting my process or my journey making this short passion project that I have embarked on. And so that's it. This was a really short episode. I'm really happy to be back and doing these. And there's no 2-camera setup this time because it was more important to get this done than to get it done super perfectly. So until next time, thank you again. Don't forget, you can follow me on all social media platforms, Simply Robotics, SimplyRobotix. Let me just say something else about the Patreon. I do have free unlocked posts on Patreon, which has some interviews that I have not and probably will not post on social media. So the only place you can watch them is on Patreon. So you might want to look into that. So until next time, guys, again, let me know what you think about the Mitchells versus the Machines, and see ya.